Hello and welcome to this episode of the Under Eagle Mountain Making Podcast. Hello, my name's Laura and this is my podcast where usually I talk about the things that I've made, I'm making and are hoping to make. But this episode is going to be a little bit different. It's a sort of ideas, like inspiration type video, and it's going to be focused around a make-along organised by Kaci over at Young Folk Knits. I'm sure loads of you know who she is and follow her podcast. And if you don't, you should, because she's really good. She does a huge amount of knitting and sewing. She's really prolific, so there's loads of ideas. But she's also really funny and she's really enjoyable to watch. So it's a really good podcast. And yeah, she's started on the 1st of September a make-along called Fishgirl Fall. So she's American, so fall rather than autumn. And it runs to the 21st of December. And yeah, it sounds really funny. So I watched her video about it. And, you know, she gives lots of ideas and patterns and so on that you could do to participate in this make-along. And it's about, like, apparently there's been something called Fishgirl Summer. Now, this totally passed me by. Although I had seen on Pinterest, I had seen a few things referring to, like, fisherman's aesthetic or fisherman's wife or fisherman's daughter. And kind of like beyond thinking, why is it not just Fisherwoman? Like, I don't know. I hadn't really paid any attention to it. It just passed me by. And then Kaci started doing this thing about Fishgirl Fall and like talked about this sort of fisherman's aesthetic. And I was like, oh, maybe that was what that was all about. So I watched the video and then I went back on to Pinterest and had a look at the at those posts, you know, all those outfit inspiration posts. Sorry, I know I keep looking out the window. It is the most beautiful day. And we've got like this silver birch that's kind of right in my eye line and it's moving and all the sunlight is like twinkling off its leaves and it's really beautiful and it keeps distracting me. So maybe I should just try and move away a bit. Anyway, so I went back and had a look and I thought, do you know what? I quite like the old fisher person's aesthetic. Like, I think it, you know, it appealed to me. And so immediately thinking, I want to join in the mail, like, what can I make? What can I make? But, you know, if you've been here a while, you know that I'm not really making a huge amount at the minute and particularly not not really knitting. And so I was like, oh no, what, you know, I'm disappointed. I really like the idea of it. But then actually when I sat down and thought I don't really need to make too much because I already have a lot of those things. Like there were lots of like big oversized chunky jumpers and I thought, yes, I have those. And some of them were Aran with cables. I was like, yes, I have those. And there were lots of little neckerchief, like bandana-y type things. I was like, yeah, check. And there were like boots with big chunky socks. Yes, I wear those. And there was striped tops and I was like, yes, I've got those. And like barrel leg trousers, particularly in gingham. And I was like, yes, I've got a couple of pairs of those. So I kind of feel actually I'm all set for like a Fishgirl Fall like style. So I thought what might be a good video would be like pulling out some of the things that I have that I think would fit into that aesthetic. And so, and then provide like ideas of patterns for other people to make, similar to my makes that other people could make that would be an entry into Fishgirl Fall Mal. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I also hope that Kaci doesn't mind that I'm like chatting away about, I mean, presumably it's like, you know, the whole 100 people or whatever that might see this, or maybe more, hopefully, that, you know, they might be encouraged to take part. So presumably it's a good thing, but I'm just like totally stealing her idea and I'm running with it. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So there's knitting and sewing because they're both crafts that I really enjoy, and you know, I like making things for my own wardrobe. And then there are a couple of there's like one accessory and like an idea for a home thing. So yeah, I'm sorry I've not had my morning cup of coffee. It's been quite busy since I got back from school, and I've just managed to make it, and I don't want to let it go cold, so you have to bear with me through the slurping. So the first thing, which didn't really feature at all on Kaci's list of things, and maybe because it's more sailor than fisherman, although I'm going with like seafaring, is a sailor collar. Now I love a sailor collar on anything really. I think they're lovely, and I knit this jumper, and if you've been here before you've probably seen it because I've shown it on here before and I've worn it on here before, and I wear it loads. It is one of my very, very, very favourite things that I've made, and one of my favourite things that I own. And this is a wider, it's just called the Wider, but it's like a sweater, and it's by Young Kim. I think I'll double check that in a minute because I can show you the magazine I got it out of. And it was in a line of magazine quite a few autumn winters ago, and it's a drop shoulder. It's knit in pieces, I have to say that up front. You knit the front, you knit the back, you seam them, and then you do pick up the sleeves and knit them in the round, and you do pick up and knit the collar like on the garment. You don't have to seam a collar on, which I've had experience of, and it's not fun, and you end up with like an ugly seam. Like however hard you try, that seam kind of shows at some point. But the front and back are knit in pieces. But honestly, if you don't like seaming, it's worth it. It's only a little bit of seaming, and it's really worth it. I love this jumper. But it's really good for, you know, this time of year for autumn, because the big open wide front means it doesn't get too hot. Like, it's not so brilliant during winter unless you layer stuff up underneath, and then you have to get the right thing, otherwise it looks a bit weird. But this time of year, when you still need a bit of ventilation so you don't get too hot, because it is warm, it's a DK yarn and a mohair held together. So I guess it's like an Aran weight, I think, or a worsted weight. I don't know what you'd call that. So this is the magazine it came out of, but this is quite old now, 2022. So yeah, like 3 years old, winter 2022. So I'm sure it's probably out as a like separate pattern. So you can see it's modelled on a man, but this whole issue was about unisex knits, and knits that look good on men and women. So some of them are modelled on men, some on women, sometimes both. And it's just, as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, I love that. I have to knit that. And yeah, I did. I think I knitted it in like the January 2023, and I've worn it ever since. I wear it loads. I used, I think the main yarn in it is a tuku wool, and I got the same one, but I didn't get the same mohair. I got slightly different, like slightly cherry red mohair, so it's like, it looks a bit pinky. So you can see the collar there and those big cables, and yeah, it's definitely if anybody's after like a sailor collar jumper, I would really recommend it. It's lovely. It is also knit from the bottom up, which I know some people don't like, but it is kind of meant to be oversized, and you know, and in some ways you just, I guess if you wanted to make it shorter, you might have to shorten the spaces between the cables, or you'd have to shorten it by a whole cable, which is quite a lot. So it kind of is the length that it is, but I really like it. I wear it with trousers, I wear it with dresses, I wear it with skirts, so I think it's really versatile. So that is my sailor collared item. And then there's a few other that I've come up with, one of which I would really love to knit one day, and that is a pattern by Albina McLaughlin, and it's called the Inver. And I think Inver is like the English word for the Gaelic word estuary. And so she describes it as a fisherman's henley. So it's stripy. I'll put a picture up. It's stripy, but it's textured. It's not just plain knits. It's textured, and it's stripy, and it's got a little henley collar, and then it's got quite a deep ribbon at the waist, which is really pretty. And then it has buttons, I think, at both sides, So that helps you adjust the fit, but I think it also looks really pretty. And then there is an option of doing a sailor collar, but the buttons and the buttonholes extend along both edges of the sailor collar, so you can then button it up and fold it over, and then you've got a really cozy polar neck. Yeah, I just think it's lovely. I think it's really beautiful. And again, it'd be good for in the autumn when you want it a bit open and a bit of space, and it looks super pretty. But then if it gets really cold, or like as the weather changes, you can then button it up and be cozy. So and you can see in the pictures she's like styled it. She's wearing like waders and wellies, and she's holding a fishing net, or then she's like pottering about on the beach in a skirt. So she definitely had a sort of fisherman vibe when she was going for it. So I definitely think it would fit into the cowl. And then the only other knit, and I'm going to mention it just because I really loved it, but I don't think it's that helpful because I can't find the pattern anywhere. But just as an idea, Kaci, I think about a year ago, so Kaci from Young Folk Knits, who is hosting the Mal, knit something called the Sailor Cardigan. And originally she was knitting it for the Camellia Fibre Company, so she was using their yarn and she was test knitting it for them, but they were like translating and slightly adapting a pattern by a Korean knitwear designer. But I've looked through the videos, Kaci's videos, that kind of refer to it, and I can't hear her mention that designer's name anywhere. And then I've looked on her Ravelry and it's not there, and I've looked on the Camellia Fibre company website and it's not there with their other patterns. And so I say it was a test knit, so I wonder if there's been a problem and it's not it's kind of not made it through yet, testing of, for whatever reason. But I'll put up the picture of the sample, and then if I've got a nice one of Kaci holding up hers, I'll show a picture of that. She used a really lovely like low contrast sort of pink and purple. It was really, really pretty. And when she first showed that picture, I was like, oh, I loved it, because all the ribbon and the button band and the sailor collar were all knit in a contrast colour. And it just looked beautiful. And I was really like, until everything happened with my wrists, I'd been watching and waiting for that pattern to come out, and it never did. And I was a bit sad. So yeah, like maybe if there's another cardigan similar. And to be honest, you could probably quite easily adapt the wider pattern to a cardigan. You just put steek stitches in, and then when you pick up the collar, you have to like cast on stitches and then pick up, so that you've got those. I'm going on a tangent now. But yeah, you sort of cast on these stitches here so you can sew them together. So presumably if you put a button band on, they could be attached to either side of that button band. That would make sense. And then just do the collar. So yeah, you could, even without that exact pattern, you could use that pattern as inspiration and figure out how to do a cardigan. And I think that is all pieced, including the collar, and then sewn on, so it would be nicer to pick it up. So yeah, they would be the knitting patterns that I would recommend for a sailor collar. But there are also some sewing patterns. There's two patterns that you can have both a top or a dress, like both are included in the pattern. So the first is the Roma top and dress, and that's by Sewing Therapy, and that's really pretty. It's not a massive sailor collar. It's like a full back collar here, and then it's quite shallow at the back, but it definitely has that suggestion. It has that feel, and it also has these big puffy sleeves. It's a very pretty dress. It's quite romantic. I think lots of things by this pattern design company, Sewing Therapy, are really beautiful, sort of feminine, but also quite practical. It's not all lace and flouncy and frilly or anything, but just very pretty patterns. So you could kind of wear it as a day dress out and about, or you could dress it up and kind of feel special in it. So I kind of toyed with making one of those, but to be honest, I've bought the Zadie wrap dress pattern, so I kind of think, you know, I had that in mind. I want to make that, so I'm not going to go off and buy another dress pattern and kind of allow it to usurp that, you know. So but it's in my mind for another day. I do think it's really lovely, and as I said, it's a top or a dress. And similarly, Merchant and Mills have a pattern for a top and dress that is called the Mary White. And again, it's not really super, it definitely looks a bit sort of nautical. And I think in the sample, there's a navy blue sample with white buttons, because it has like a little like button tab here. And then again, a sort of folded back collar that has a very shallow sailor collar at the back, like a suggestion really, rather than a proper sailor collar. But I think that's really nice, and it's really comfortable looking. And I think you could get a bit of sort of seafaring vibes without going full on navy blue and white, you know, little cap and everything. I don't think you'd look like you're about to go on deck, but it definitely has that feel to it, and again would be really practical. And then the last one is a blouse called the Harmony Top, and that's by Fibre Mood, and again it just has that sort of sailor collar vibe to it. Oh, I missed out a knitting one. Sorry, I'm going to go back, because this is something that I would really like to make. If you kind of like the idea of a sailor collar, but you maybe don't want to like commit to a full knitted jumper or a sewn dress, but you just maybe sometimes want to add that feel, there is a pattern on the Love Crafts website. So that's like a website to buy. You can buy knitting needles, wool, but also for other crafts as well, not just yarn, like embroidery or whatever. I bet loads of you know what Love Crafts is. On their website they have some patterns, and there is a pattern by Craftling Designs called the Mattress, like not mattress, Matros, Matros, and that is like a little kerchief, but it is like a sailor collar. So you could just, whatever you're wearing, you could just add it for that little like sailor feel, but you don't have to commit to a full garment. I thought that was quite cool, and it does have like that line of contrast colour that you really commonly see in traditional like sailor suits or sailor collars. But again, you could omit that if you didn't want to be sort of too overboard sailor collary, or obviously whatever colour you did it in. If you do it in navy blue and white, you're definitely going to have super strong nautical vibes. But if you did it in red and pink, or like cream and brown or whatever, it would look a bit more like, depending on the colour you chose, it could look a bit more chic maybe, and yeah, or you could do like really bright jazzy colours, and sort of that would tone down the sort of seafaring vibes a bit. But it would be like one of those really lovely cozy little neckerchiefs, bit warm here, but it would give you a bit more coverage at the back actually. So I do quite like the idea of knitting one of those. I think I haven't looked at the construction. It's not a free pattern, but it's not very expensive. I think it's about £4. But I think it is just knitting garter, so it'd be, I think, there's increasing and decreasing, I should imagine, but I think it'd be fairly mindless. Excuse me. Oh, that got a bit cold. So yeah, that's like a little bonus knitting pattern that you could add to any garment to kind of sailor it up. So yeah, that's like the first category was like sailor collars. The next category, there were loads of like Aran jumpers, with, you know, big heavy jumpers with lots of cables. You know, that's what they were, weren't they? Aran jumpers. They were fisherman's jumpers, and I think I'm right in saying that the design of your cables originally, traditionally, the design of the cables would specific. I don't know if it's to a family or if maybe to like a community, so that sadly if the sailor or the fisherman drowned when they recovered the body, you know, being in the water and animals and everything, they might not be able to figure out who they are, but the cables on the jumper would help to identify where they came from. I think that's right. I don't think I've made that up. So there is a very strong like fisherman theme is what I'm saying, and I've got two, neither of which are knitted. They are both hand knitted, but not by me or anybody that I know. Both of them were charity shop finds, which, like this one, I got in a charity shop in North Wales near my dad's, and it was £5, and it's massive. Like, it's a really big oversized jumper. I mean, I dread to think how much the wool cost. You know, it's a little bit scratchy. It's like, it feels like an Aran jumper you would expect to feel, but I wear it loads now. Sadly, I have got a bit of a stain here, and I don't know what that was. And I've tried a few things and I can't get it out. So if you've got any tips for getting it out, I've tried all the obvious ones, but if you've got any tips for getting it out, I'd really like it, because I wear it loads and I sort of go out in it and then I think, oh God, I've got that big stain. But yeah, it's got loads and loads and loads of cables, different types, lots of moss stitch all over the back too. I really hate it when you have a plain back. I think a lot of shop bought cable knits are like that. They're all fancy at the front and then like boring at the back. But this is all over. It's really huge. It's really oversized. And in winter, I wear it loads and loads and loads. If I go away, I often take it as like, instead of a dressing gown, so chuck it on over my pajamas or whatever. I think it's one of the best £5 I've ever spent, and every time I put it on, I kind of give thanks to whoever knitted it, and I also feel slightly sorry for them. I hope they know, like, because I don't think it had been worn, it had just been given away to the charity shops. I hope they know that somehow the universe tells them that I've got it and I love it and I really appreciate all their work. So there's that one. And then there's this one, which is a cardie, which again, when I got it, I don't think it had been worn because it hadn't been blocked. All these were the slip stitch, these are slip stitches, and they were all like concertinaed up and crinkled up, and the wool was really crunchy, like really scratchy, really crunchy. And so I washed it and blocked it, and I mean, if you were really sensitive to wool, you probably wouldn't like it, but it's softer than the jumper, for example. I think it's really soft. It feels really nice. And so it's a bit more simple. It's just got these slip stitch columns all the way through it, but then it's got these beautiful cables. I don't know what they're called, but they've got them up the front and down each arm. And then again, it's just got the slip stitching on the back. But I wear this loads. It's got like a higher collar. It's a bit floppy. Nice brown buttons, pockets. Which no doubt holds a handkerchief. That's what's in, yeah, most of my pockets. I've had this on this morning when I was walking down to school. It's really good for this time of year because it's like a big jacket. So, you know, if you were going to knit, I don't know, like a Dagmar, or I think the Crayabea did one, didn't she? Was it a stick season jacket, something like this, one of those that you can kind of wear as outerwear when it's cold but not rainy. And I wear it lots and lots and lots. So jumpers that then, or cardigans that you might be interested in knitting if you wanted a cabley like fisherman cardigan. Now I know loads of people are going to say the book club cardigan by Sari Nordland, and I know that has been hugely popular and lots of people have knitted it. Loads of the podcasters that I watch have knitted it, but I don't like it. I don't know, I couldn't really tell you why I don't like it. Well, I don't like the fact that the pattern, or the cabling pattern, doesn't join up on the shoulder. I find that detail annoys me. I know some people say it doesn't bother them, but it does bother me. I find that like jags the eye, if that makes sense. But I don't know, I've just never looked at it and thought that's horrible or anything. Like, I'm not having a go at anybody that likes it or at Sari Nordland for designing it, but it's just never grabbed me. I don't know why. It hasn't. It's not my cup of tea. So I'm not going to recommend that. I'm going to recommend a cardigan called the Barlin by Emily Green, and that comes in, I'll put a picture up. That comes in 2 lengths, and I particularly like the cropped one. And again, last autumn when I was starting to think about knits that I'd like to do for this year, that was on my list. I wanted to do a all over cable cardigan, and that was on my list. I think it's really nice, and it's although it is all over cables, and you know, in the pattern pictures you can see it's in a sort of neutral coloured wool, and she's obviously somewhere with water, so it is referring back to those sort of fisherman jumpers style. It's, I think the shape of it and the cropping of it makes it like a bit more contemporary, and it moves it away from that, you know, it is oversized and it's boxy, you know, but it's not fitted or anything, but it moves it away from that kind of traditional style and like updates it a little bit, and I bet it would look really pretty over dresses and things. So I definitely think that's a winner. I really like it. And then a sweater that I also really liked, which is all over cables, but so again, does give definitely that suggestion, but it isn't explicitly an Aran like my big Aran jumper. Is the Dawny sweater, I think it's Aran weight, but you know what I mean, is the Dawny sweater by the Crayabeya. I just think it's really pretty. I think this is one of her earlier patterns, but I just really like the I'm going to say pattern again, like the pattern of the cables. I think it looks really nice. I think it looks quite simple, and again, so one of her pattern designers really cropped it, not pattern designers, sorry, one of her test knitters really cropped it, and I think that looks super duper. So I'll try and put a picture of that in Finglish Knits, she's called, I think she's called Yenny, and she did it in like a rusty colour. So yeah, it was like a fisherman cable sweater, and I think that's what Rebecca's inspiration was, because she wears it on a boat. But the colour that Yenny's chosen and the fact that she's knitted it in a cropped style kind of again updates it and makes it a bit more contemporary. So really, really love it. And then the last two are both by a lady called Kim Hargreaves, who designed for Rowan. Maybe she still does, I don't know. But these two were designed for Rowan. And you know, if you know, Rowan is a yarn company and they produce like pattern books. And so you can look at them on Ravelry, but you can't buy the patterns individually on Ravelry. You can some, but not all of them, and not necessarily the older ones. So these two, you can go and look at them on Ravelry, but then I think you'd have to try and find the pattern books on like eBay or somewhere like that, which you can do. I've done that in the past with other Rowan pattern books. There are lots of them out there, and I mean, you might find one that's like they want 50 or 60 quid, and then like the next day you might find one for £3.50, like the same one. It just depends who's selling it. So they often are out there to be bought cheaply. But both these ones are by Kim Hargreaves, and the first one particularly I've had my eye on for a while, and it's called Gratitude, and that is a cable, it's an all over cable knit sweater, but the cables run that way, from like, I think I haven't looked at it, but I think you must knit one sleeve and then over, and it's just got a boat neck with the cable running either side, and it's not massively oversized. It is quite cropped. I think it's knit in a cotton yarn, so it's a summer garment, I guess, rather than, although obviously you could knit it in whatever yarn you wanted if you wanted it to be warmer. But I just think it's really cool that the cables run that way. And again, I mean, I think it is an older pattern. It's probably from the, I'm going to say the 90s or the early 2000s, something like that. I can't quite remember, so don't quote me on that. But I don't know, it's not an old-fashioned cables like fisherman sweater. It is definitely coastal, but it's kind of like, you know, fun summer days, like days on the beach rather than catching stinky fish. If you see what I mean. And then another one of her patterns, I think it was in a different book, but and again it's out of print, but I'm sure you could find it if you were desperate to, is the Able, and that's a sweater that just has one central big cable up the front, and then it splits into, I guess, a bit of a shawl collar, but it does give that hint of a sailor collar. It's not like squared off at the back or anything. I think it just sort of rounds off at the back, so I guess you'd call it a shawl collar, but with the cable and that, you know, it does have that suggestion of a sailor collar. So I quite like that, because it's quite a subtle like nod to cables and to sailor collars, but it definitely fits into that sort of nautical theme. So yeah, I haven't got a knitting pattern for cables. Sorry, a sewing pattern for cables, obviously. So sailor collars, cables, and my third pattern is stripes. I've got this, which is just a thermal vest that I think I got from like a high street shop many years ago, and I do wear it. It's very soft. It's very like it is a thermal that you'd wear under stuff, but this time of year when it's just a bit cool, it's quite nice. So you know, not at all handmade, but it's navy blue and white, and you can't wear navy blue and white stripes without the suggestion of the nautical. And so you could basically take any pattern and make it look seasidey by adding stripes, particularly stripes of a certain colour or combination. I think any sort of blue with white will always look a bit seasidey. So you could just knit vanilla socks and put stripes on them, or you could just any cardigan or jumper and put stripes on it. Depending on the pattern, that might take a bit of thinking about into making sure your stripes match up or whatever. So you might want to buy a pattern that already has stripes in it. One I made was this. Now I used a rather subtle colour changing yarn, so my stripes are a bit subtle, but this is the Stripes sweater by Andrea Mowry, which is a circular yoke sweater, and as the name suggests, is knit in stripes. I think they're about an inch deep, the stripes in the pattern. I'll put a picture up. And it's a good pattern, you know, she's a great pattern designer. Everything's really clear, lots of info and things. So yeah, again, you could use that to make a stripy pattern. Other patterns that I like the look of that I have not knitted is the ever-present Olga sweater by Petite Knits. That seems to be everywhere, and I do really like it. It's really lovely. I've seen I think Petite Knits sample is a navy blue and a white, or it's like a speckly white, isn't it? Which is really lovely. But I've seen quite a lot of green and cream ones, and Emma at Woolly Mammoth Fibre did like a pink and a red one. She dyed it herself. I think they're probably both shades of madder. It's like a cherry pink and a sort of clay pink, or a cherry red and a clay pink, and that is really lovely. What else? Tides by Rebecca Clow. Again, that's a wavy one. So if you didn't want straight stripes, I mean, there's like, what is it? Curtis Vikika did the stripe pipes. There's that one. But Rebecca did one which I think is knit in like a bit like a shell pattern, and so you get waves, and that's called tides. So obviously a nod to the nautical. And I think that you can do that as a jumper, as a cardi, I think. So yeah, loads, you know, there are lots and lots of stripy patterns out there, or as I say, you can just take a pattern that you already have, that you already know, and if you're confident, you can add stripes to it. So yeah, they're the sort of three main categories that I had, and then there's a couple of bonus ones. One is a bag, and I hadn't really thought about this till I made it, and I thought that looks really seasidey. A while ago, I made a bag pattern called the Lido, and I think Lido is in an outdoor swimming pool because the pattern designer had said she wanted a bag big enough that she could pack all the stuff in if she was taking the family to a swimming pool, like a Lido for the day, or to the beach for the day. Then it would make a really good beach bag. I use mine as a going away bag if I'm going away for a few days. It's really big. It's basically a posh IKEA bag. You know, those big blue bags. You know, again, the designer said that was her inspiration. I can't remember her name. It was in a fairly recent issue of Tauco magazine, so not the last one, the one before, and I got the pattern for free because I was part of their make and share, so it's a bit like a test sew group, and I made my pink one, and it's great. It's a dead easy pattern. It's really straightforward. It's really clever. The biggest one uses like a metre of fabric as long as it's the right width, it uses a metre of fabric, and it's really good. And I made it and thought I'd make another one. And my aunt, who I don't think is going to watch this, she's going to be 65 next month, and she did, like, I think she's a bit better now, but for years, whenever she came to visit or if we went anywhere, you know, all her stuff would just be packed in an IKEA bag. And I can sympathise. I've done that many times myself, because they're so easy to chuck so much stuff into, and they just expand, fit everything. And because it's open, you can just keep putting stuff in, you know. It's brilliant. And we always used to tease her about packing into IKEA bags. And I thought, well, I'll make her a posh IKEA bag. And she really loves blue and white, and lots of stuff, you know, she wears a lot of blue and white stripes. House is sort of, she lives in Lincolnshire, but her house is sort of really coastal. It's really beautiful, but she's got a very definite sort of seaside aesthetic. And so I've made her this one. I've got a picture that I can put in so you can see it a bit better. So it's this huge bag, perfect for going to the beach in, which is something she loves to do. And it's made out of this really nice Japanese denim, which is indigo dyed, and then this cotton webbing, which, you know, is obviously very nautical. And it's got pockets both sides. It's got a little tab inside that you can attach your keys to or whatever, so you don't lose them. It's just a really cool pattern. So, you know, I'm not being encouraged to say this or anything. It is just a really good pattern. When I made it, I thought, I'll definitely make that again. And you can make it in a slightly smaller size too, but it's just like the perfect seaside-y bag. So, and then the other thing that I have made that has a sort of nautical feel to it, or a sort of seafaring feel to it, is I made a quilt for my son, and I've had a rummage. I cannot find where it is, probably because it's been summer, it's probably been folded up and put away. But I made him a quilt a few years ago that was indigo dyed fabric, not dyed by me, dyed by a lady called Jessica at Sugar House Workshop, and it's a really dark indigo, and I used that and white, and I made him a quilt that has a number of different star blocks on it. It was like a nighttime one, and you know, there's that thing about sailors navigating by the stars. So hopefully I've got a picture of it somewhere, or I'll have another look after this and I'll put in a picture of it. So put that up. But there are loads of sort of sea themed blocks, like traditional quilting blocks. So if you wanted to make a quilt, or if you wanted to make a bag with a quilt block on, or like last year there were loads and loads of hot water bottles that had quilt blocks on, and obviously a lot of people just did a star. I think like the Ohio star block is a really popular one. But if you wanted an entry into Kaci's Fishgirl Fall Mal, but you didn't want a star, you wanted something a bit different, there are other options. So there is a block called the Sailboat. Hang on a minute, because I'm sure I'm meant to get my quilting book out. Right, having spent 10 minutes yanking out all my quilting books and looking through them, I can't find the image that that I know I've got. I just can't find it. So I've got an image on my Pinterest board, so I'll put a picture of that up. There's a quilt pattern. It's called a Sailboat, I think it's called a block, and it, you know, it's really obvious about. It's very cute. It's usually used in children's quilts, so you could use that, or a bit more of a complicated block. There are blocks around compasses, so they're like very complicated circles and stars. Again, I'll put a picture of that in. So, you know, you wouldn't just have to use it if you wanted to make a quilt. You could use that to make a patch, as I say, on a bag or a hot water bottle. Or you know, I've got a denim shirt, a secondhand denim shirt that somebody made a block and appliqued onto the back, and I've seen people do that with sweatshirts and jackets and all sorts. So you know, you could add a bit of nautical patchwork to anything as a way of joining them out if you weren't a knitter, because not everybody is, or you know, a lot of time you have plans for your knitting and to add something else in order to join you might want to join in a make along or a knit along or something, but you might just not genuinely have the space and the time to do it. But a smaller sewing project is often more accessible and more time friendly, and it allows you to join in the fun of a sort of community event. So yeah. Oh, and the last thing on that, I think the last video I showed some books that I have by a lady called Janet Clare, and a few people got back to me about the books. They're really lovely books, and there is one that she's done that I don't have, which is all like not seaside, but nautically themed. It's called Hearty Good Wishes. I don't have it, so I can't show you, but there is, if you go to YouTube and you type in Janet Clare, and that's Clare, Hearty Good Wishes, that's the name of the book, and then Fat Quarter Shop. That shop's YouTube channel had Janet Clare doing a little talk and a little flick through of the book, so you can have it's quite a good way of having a look what's in the book, because it's not just like a quilt block book, it's more like a pliqued, and you can do a quilt, or the stuff for like a tablecloth or a picnic blanket or something, or a wall hanging. But all of her ideas are very much, she wants you to take them as a point of inspiration, and then you can do whatever you want with them. But she has all the templates for what she uses are there in the book, and they're all full-sized. But they're just nice things to have, like, or have a look in your library maybe. They are just nice books to look through. They're visually pleasing, but she has lots of nice ideas. So that the main quilt has got a picture of the British Isles in the middle, and then round it embroidered are the different areas that are mentioned in the shipping forecast. And yeah, it's nice. But that would be, if you wanted to do something such as seafaring themed for your home, a cushion or something, then that might be a nice thing to look at. Janet Clare, Hearty Good Wishes. So yeah, just an idea. Turn over my little page here. So I think that's the end of it. Basically, I had sailor collars, cables, stripes, and then a few sort of home things, or accessory type things. Thank you if you've watched it this far. As you know, if you've watched before, I am doing a tiny bit of knitting. That's what I'm going to say. I've not been doing any knitting because I've had this damage to my wrist. I had some steroid injections, as you probably know, over the summer holidays to hopefully ease the pain. That was really just to treat the symptoms, but it didn't work. I got no benefit from that. So I've been back to see the doctor. She is a hand surgeon, hand and wrist surgeon, and yeah, the decision is made that I'm going to have operations. So I'm going to start with the left wrist. That will hopefully be sometime in the new year. She said it's quite a long recovery time. I'll be in a cast for a while, can't drive for a while, and then there's a period where I just can't put any pressure on it, so I can't press on it, I can't lift anything with it. So she said things like, no supermarket shopping bags, no draining a pan if you're cooking or anything. So it's going to be quite tricky. I think that's for about 3 months. So it's going to be quite tricky. She said the recovery time is sort of 9 to 12 months to hopefully everything to be back to normal, hopefully better, when you get to the point where you don't feel like you've just had an operation, is what she was saying. And then of course, once I've done that arm, I then got to do the other arm. So from when that commences, which I say is hopefully in the new year, I've got like 2 years of no crafting, and it's not just knitting. It'll probably be nothing, because I know people can do it, but I don't think I could sew something on the machine one-handed. I'd need both hands. And maybe, if I recover really well, I might be able to do it after 6 months. I just don't know how it's going to go. So I might be able to do a few bits and pieces. But certainly, I won't be planning on doing anything once you know, once I get into to that time. So I've got to try and cram in a lot of crafting time between now and then. Now, sort of January, February time, she reckons. And I've decided I am going to go back to trying to do a tiny bit of knitting, just because I've been most of a year, like certainly the past sort of 8 months, 9 months, with virtually no knitting at all. A month, I mean, months with not even a stitch, which kind of made me really sad. And I think the idea of like another 2.5 years with no knitting is just really, really sad. So I'm going to try and squeeze in a little bit. If it really, really hurts, obviously I will stop. I'm not going to cause myself more damage just before going to have an operation, which is hopefully to prevent that from happening. But I will just try and do a bit of knitting and curb the other things that hurt my wrist. So like gardening, I've been doing, I can't dig or anything, but I have been cutting back and deadheading and things like that. And you know, the snipping with the scissors does hurt after a little while, and I'm not going to go into it, it's boring, but I'm going to try and cut back on all of those sorts of things and just try and do a row a day. And I am going to try and cast on that jumper that I showed you the wool for, that Jacob's wool. I'm going to knit a tulip sweater, hopefully. I'm going to try. So I'll cast that on, because that, once I've got past the short rows, that will just give me a bit of easy round and round knitting. So I could do it, I could take it with me somewhere, I could chat to people, or if I go to knit night, you know, I might get a few stitches in. But really, I'm going to concentrate on my Wellerman shawl by Caitlin Hunter. I'm not going to go into it, because if you've been here before, you've heard me bang on about it, except to say that would be an entry into Kaci's Fishgirl Fall Mal. It's a shawl by Boylan Knitworks, and it's got pine trees on it because she wanted it to reflect where she lives, so there are lots of pine trees, but its inspiration and its name is very firmly rooted in the sea. So the idea for a sort of cabled patterned shawl, she said, came from Fisherman sweaters. Like that was her first point of inspiration. So even though her cables are meant to represent pines, it came from the idea of cables in a fisherman sweater. And it's called the Wellerman, which is like the name of a sea shanty, which was really popular a couple of years ago, which is basically, the story's like basically a Moby Dick type story. There's a ship that's hunting a whale, and they've harpooned the whale, but the whale's not going down without a fight. And so the whaling ship has to keep being resupplied. I don't know, that's just what the story's about. But it made me laugh. That was one of the reasons I chose that pattern, because my boys were obsessed. They still are slightly, if I'm honest, with that song. They love it. But there was this period where they just played it over and over and over again. And everywhere you went, you could just hear a boy going, "We're sailing," like chuntering along to themselves. It was so funny. So, you know, it really reminded me of them. So I think that would be a good entry into the MAL. And you know, whips are allowed and unfinished projects are allowed. It's just about joining in and being part of it. So I did a row yesterday, so I now have finished. I'm following the written instructions, but I have now finished the first chart. So it feels like a bit of an accomplishment. I've done 12 rows of like 130 odd, but you know, it feels possible that I might one day have a shawl, because obviously the rows are getting shorter as I go, because you start from the wide end. So yeah, that would be my entry. So all that to say is, go and have a look at Kaci's video if you've not already. Go and have a look at, it says Fisherman's Wife, Fisherman's Daughter. Let's just say Fisher Person, or, you know, Fisherwoman aesthetic on Pinterest or wherever, and see if it chimes with you, because it definitely did with me. And as I say, I already have loads of stuff that I think will fit in with it. And there's loads of good stuff out there that you could adapt. My vote firmly, if I was choosing something for you, would be something with a sailor collar, because I just love them. And I would definitely recommend that wider sweater. Every time I wear it, I get loads and loads of compliments. But yeah, if you are already joining in and you've got your plan and you know what you're doing, let me know. I'd be really interested to hear. Or let me know if anything, you know of any other patterns, particularly sailor collar cardigans, that would fit with the whole vibe. All right, thanks ever so much for watching and take care. Bye.